several years, my judiciary team has been led by Alex Aronson, who is behind me right now. He has done some really, truly exemplary work on reports that we've done, both generally and for the court subcommittee, on a considerable number of Supreme Court and appellate court amicus briefs that we have filed, and of course on helping me deal with the business, the day-to-day work of the committee. And today will be his last day here in the Judiciary Committee. He is leaving us for Georgetown Law School to lead the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection, which is an outstanding opportunity for a very talented young man. And my loss is somewhat offset by the trajectory that this position puts him on for a continued brilliant career. And I just wanted to take this moment to ask that the committee recognize his service to us all and to ask unanimous consent that I be allowed to put a more fulsome statement into the record of the committee regarding his service to this committee.
Well, without objection, and I would say that we want to salute Alex for his service to you and to the committee, despite his unhealthy obsession with the Boston Red Sox. Is that true?
Got me.
We appreciate his service. If I can say,
Pat Leahy agrees, for the record.
If I can say a word as senators gather here, many of you have asked what is the status of nominations on the calendar now that we are nearing the end of this year, and how does the Senate treat nominees who are waiting to be considered. Rule 31, Senate Standing Rule, states that any nomination not acted upon by the full Senate in the first session of Congress must be sent back to the White House to be resubmitted at the start of the second session. Historically, though, the Senate has worked on a bipartisan basis to avoid sending back nominees who are non-controversial and who have bipartisan support. It takes unanimous consent of the Senate, but nominees can be kept in the status quo, that is, pending on the floor of the Senate or in committee. By keeping nominees in status quo, the Senate bypasses the need for renomination and delay and the cumbersome steps inherent in that process, including going back through committee markup process and requiring career employees in the Justice Department and others to work over holidays to update paperwork and the like. During the Trump administration, as a minority party, the Democrats agreed to keep dozens of nominees here in the Senate rather than requiring the Trump administration and this committee to engage in the renomination process. In 2017, at the end of the first session of the 115th Congress, Democrats agreed to keep a total of 58 Judiciary Committee nominees here in the Senate.
But you can see we're working on it
Those,
on our side.
Senator Padilla, I think you better turn off your microphone. Those 58 nominees consisted of 27 judicial nominees and 31 executive branch nominees, including all U.S. attorneys and U.S. Marshal nominees pending at the time. Notably, the majority of judicial nominees kept in the Senate, 21 of 27, were from states with Republican senators. In short, Democrats did not simply return all Trump nominees, but rather worked out a bipartisan agreement with our Republican colleagues that spared the time and resources required for renomination. As we near the end of the session, I have opened that subject with Senator Grassley, and I hope that in the spirit of bipartisanship we can find an accommodation. I hope we can reach an agreement to keep nominees here in the Senate in the days to come and weeks to come as we go into the second year of this session.
Before you go on, could I comment
Sure, of
on
course.
that? Because you're entitled to a comment from me because we did have a good discussion on it. I want to say that we're working on that. I can tell you that. I can tell you I think it's tied up with some bigger things that are involved in these negotiations between McConnell and between Schumer. And there may be other people involved, but I'm sure they're the key ones that are going to work this out. And the only thing that I'd give some correction to statistics you gave is that in 2018, we didn't get any cooperation on that, but there has been general cooperation on it, and I want to recognize that general cooperation. But I think there's bigger fish in this issue than just the number of judges.
And I think you're right. I don't disagree with you. And I thank Senator Grassley, as always, for being responsive and fair in dealing with this, and I hope this will be another issue where we can point to that. So we have 5 nominees on the agenda today. One is Kathy Vidal, nominated Under Secretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and Director of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Listed for the first time, will be held over at the request of the minority. Let me turn to the 4 judicial nominees receiving a vote today. First is Bridget Brennan, one of 3 nominees to the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio. She's been a litigator for 2 decades, the majority of her career. She's been Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. Prosecuted a range of matters from human and sex trafficking to money laundering to civil rights. As testament to her experience and skills, Ms. Brennan was named Acting U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio in January of 2021. She received qualified rating from the American Bar Association. She has the bipartisan support of her 2 senators, Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman. I'll vote for her nomination and encourage my colleagues to do the same. We also have John Chun, who's been nominated to the Western District of Washington. He served in the Washington State Judiciary since 2014 as judge on the King County Superior Court, for the past 3 years as a judge on the Washington Court of Appeals. In that time, he's presided over 90 cases that have gone to verdict or judgment in an almost even split between criminal and civil matters, jury and bench trials. Prior to his appointment to the bench, Judge Chun spent 10 years as a commercial and employment litigation attorney, federal and state courts, making partner in 6 years. In private practice, he tried 5 cases to verdict or judgment. Notably, since his clerkship with the Honorable Eugene Wright for the Ninth Circuit, Judge Chun, a Pacific Northwest native himself, has spent his entire legal career practicing in the district to which he's been nominated. He's the son of Korean immigrants. Judge Chun was the first in his family to go to law school, graduating from Cornell Law School in 1994 and receiving his BA from Columbia in 91. With such extensive court experience and knowledge of the district he will serve, Judge Chun has the strong support of his home state senators Murray and Cantwell. He also was unanimously recognized by the American Bar Association as well qualified. We'll also be voting on Charles Fleming's nomination to the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio. Extensive litigation experience, proven commitment to equal justice. I will be supporting him. He attended Kent State University, Case Western Reserve University Law School, worked in private practice for a short period of time before dedicating his career to public service. He has worked as an assistant federal public defender in the Office of the Federal Public Defender since '91. His time as a federal public defender has given him a remarkable breadth of courtroom experience. He appears in court 15 to 20 times each month, tried 17 cases to verdict. ABA has unanimously rated him well qualified. He has the bipartisan support, again, of Senators Brown and Portman. David Ruiz is nominated for the Northern District of Ohio. For more than 5 years, he served as U.S. Magistrate in that same court. In that role, he's presided over 80 cases that have gone to verdict or judgment. ABA rated him unanimously well qualified. Prior to assuming the bench, he was an assistant U.S. attorney for 6 years. Before that, 10 years as a litigator in private practice. Strong bipartisan support from Senators Brown and Portman. Senator Portman praised Judge Ruiz's nomination and stated he has the experience, temperament, and high ethical standards that have served him well as federal magistrate judge. Once confirmed, Judge Ruiz will be the first judge of Hispanic origin in Ohio's history to serve as an Article III federal judge. Before voting on these nominees, I want to recognize the ranking member if he wishes to make remarks.
Yeah. Our side would like to hold over the nominee for PTO. I'm going to be supporting 2 of the judicial nominees up for vote. Both Ms. Brennan and Judge Ruiz have worked as assistant U.S. attorneys and in private practice. Judge Ruiz has also served as a federal magistrate judge for several years. I think both of them are qualified. Their records don't raise the same concerns that they'll be activist judges as other nominees. I'll be opposing 2 nominees. I have serious concerns about Judge Chun. Would be an activist on the federal bench. He wouldn't put up a label on himself on his judicial philosophy. and his description about it was very vague. That reinforces concerns that a lot of us on this side have about his record as a state court judge. I'll also be opposing Mr. Fleming. We've seen a number of public defenders nominated in this administration. I've spoken before about the need to determine whether a nominee is a Bill of Rights judge and not a criminal defense judge. From his record, I'm concerned about Mr. Fleming falls into the second category. I yield.
Does anyone seek recognition to speak on Bridget Brennan, nominated to the Northern District of Ohio? On favorably reporting the nomination of Bridget Brennan to the U.S. District Judge for the Northern District of Ohio, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy. Aye. Mrs. Feinstein. Aye. Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons. Aye. Mr. Blumenthal. Aye. Ms. Hirono.
Mr. Brennan.
Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Padilla. Aye. Mr. Ossoff. Aye. Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornick.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. No. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 16 yeas, 6 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on John Chun for the Western District of Washington? On favorably reporting his nomination, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 12 yeas, 10 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on Charles Fleming?
If I might just briefly, Mr. Chairman, I heard comments made about whether somebody's been a public defender. I spent 8 years as a prosecutor. During that time, I tried more cases as a prosecutor than anybody else in the state of Vermont. A number of those cases were against extremely well-qualified public defenders. Some of the judges I tried before had been known as defense attorneys before. I found those were the cases that went the best because you had people who knew what they're doing on both sides. You had far less chance of something being thrown out on appeal. I won the case, I knew I won the case. And I certainly would not have anything against somebody being a federal judge who had been a public defender. Certainly as a prosecutor, I found them very, very good people to be before.
Thank you, Senator Leahy. Does anyone seek further recognition to speak on Charles Fleming, nominated to the Northern District of Ohio? If not, on favorably reporting that nomination, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 13 yeas, 9 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on David Ruiz, nominated to the Northern District of Ohio? If not on favorably reporting that nomination, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornick.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 14 yeas, 8 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor if there's no further business to come before the Senate Judiciary Committee. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you.